with you in this video how you should never have to pay for a Nexus letter. I've heard from several veterans who have paid upwards of $2,500, $2,000, and I know the latest was $1,600 from the YouTube channel CivDiv. They have a referral to a medical doctor who will write a Nexus letter for $1,600. I'm certain CivDiv gets a referral for that. But listen, you should not have to pay $1,600 for a Nexus letter. Now, I get it, and I completely understand it. There's a lot of veterans who are desperately wanting to get to that mighty 100, so they're willing to gamble and pay $2,500, $1,600 so that they can get their claim approved, right? So they're in a situation where a Nexus is required and they want to get that next higher level rating. Now, the fortunate thing is that if it's a real and legitimate claim, you shouldn't have to pay for a Nexus letter. And I'm going to show you in a 3-part video series where this first one is going to give you an overview of it. And then the next are going to share with you exactly how you can go about in putting that Nexus letter together. Okay, so let's get right into it. So here, look, don't pay for a Nexus letter. Do this instead. And I'm going to be sharing with you what you can be doing, right? So first and foremost, get a referral from your primary care provider to a specialist. Now, I know that many veterans, perhaps you included, their only medical is through the VA. Now, even the VA doctor should be referring you to a specialist. Now, here's the thing. If you have a real and legitimate claim, real and legitimate issue, you should be wanting or have been referred to a specialist already, whatever that might be. Now, a doctor, of course, can take care of many conditions. But what I'm going to be sharing with you here is that having that specialist, that referral to specialist, is going to help in this Nexus letter. And what do I mean? Now, let's imagine a game, and there's your regular player and there's your boosted player. Let's say, for example, you're going to want the boosted player, of course, right? Well, a medical doctor writing a Nexus letter for a stomach issue, for example, that's using a regular player. Now, a superpower, if you will, is someone who has gone to a specialist who is, let's say for a stomach, they go to a type of doctor that can help, that specializes in that disease. That's working with as a superpower player, because when the VA is looking at the medical diagnosis or the medical diagnosis and the Nexus, it's going to be that much more powerful when it comes from a specialist than just from a regular doctor. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, the VA will recognize medical professionals and they all can write Nexus letters. However, once again, you want to work with somebody, a regular, or do you want to be a superpower player? Getting a referral and getting a diagnosis, getting your medication prescribed to you from a specialist, and where a specialist can share more detail about your claim than a medical doctor. So get the referral to a specialist. Next, get a diagnosis. No matter if your condition is part of the PACT Act, presumptives, you still have to have a medical diagnosis. Please do not submit any claims without an official diagnosis. If you truly want to win your claim, you're going to want to go and see a specialist. Even it could be your medical doctor, but as I mentioned, go to a specialist to diagnose you. Now, can you go to a CMP exam and get a diagnosis from the nurse practitioner, for example? Certainly. But once again, this is about having a good, strong claim and not just throwing something at the VA and hoping that it sticks. You want to submit a strong, supportive claim, and one that has a diagnosis, and you're not relying on the VA for this diagnosis, especially at a CMP exam, because more than likely you're going to be going to and visiting with a nurse practitioner. And once again, as I mentioned, whatever your condition is, there should and ought to be a specialist, perhaps 90% of the time or more, right? That's going to help you have a much stronger claim, right? So get a diagnosis, get referred to a specialist. Remember, your case is your situation. Know if there's a specialist that you can be referred to, and then get an official diagnosis from the specialist. Now, I know a lot of veterans are saying, once again, I only have my medical diagnosis or my medical treatment through the VA, and the VA doctor will not sign a Nexus letter, and that's correct. Now, remember I mentioned to you that there are some veterans who have paid $2,500, $2,000, and $1,600 for a Nexus letter, and a Nexus letter does not guarantee approval, right? So here's the thing: if you're willing to put $1,600 to a Nexus letter, how about looking to see privately, a private doctor, what it would cost for an appointment with a specialist outside of the VA, so that in the event you don't have to pay for a Nexus letter if you follow what I'm about to share with you. So look at it that way instead of saying, well, I don't have the insurance. Many veterans are willing to pay $2,500, $1,600 for a Nexus letter when you could perhaps go to a specialist, private specialist, and pay that fee and follow what I'm about to share with you here. All right. So once you have the diagnosis, perhaps have another appointment to discuss the results, and an opportunity, because either during the first appointment or schedule a second appointment, the doctor more than likely will ask you, do you have any questions? That is the time when you can ask the doctor, listen, here's my goal. Here's what I'm trying to do. Would you be willing, if I were to put a letter together based off of your diagnosis and what you shared with me today, if I were to put a letter together, would you be willing to help me by signing this letter that I'll put together? Of course, you can review it and of course look it over. Is that something that you'd be willing to do? Now, there's three things that potentially can happen. He will say, certainly. He will say no. Or he would say, sure, we can have a look at it and we'll go from there. So it's a yes, no, or a maybe. And then you continue to follow these steps that I'm about to share with you here, right? So instead of focusing on getting a quote unquote Nexus letter paid, there are other ways that you could save. You could spend less money and potentially get a Nexus letter for much less. And perhaps, like in my case, I did go to a specialist and they ended up filling out a DBQ for me. And eventually the VA did schedule a CMP exam, which they shouldn't have, because I already had in my medical documents with the VA the diagnosis and history. So that DBQ, there was a CMP exam was not necessary. When the claim came back, it came back denied, where they favored the CMP exam's nurse practitioner over a specialist. I did a higher level review showing how they, first off, should not have scheduled a CMP exam, and second of all, how they took they took the opinion of the CMP examiner, nurse practitioner, over that of someone who is a specialist, which was absolutely wrong. I won my higher level review, and I'm sharing this information with you now so that you could potentially be in the same situation that I was, or that, yeah. So compare your previous issues with your current diagnosis. So here's the thing, veteran. If you have a real and legitimate claim on something that was caused or aggravated by your military service, there should be medical documentation. There should be a history of medical documentation. So you will then, look at that previous, this is putting together your Nexus letter, right? You will have that previous information of perhaps symptoms, right? Now you'll be referred to a specialist or get an official diagnosis from your doctor, right? And then this is part of the letter where you show how these issues that you've been dealing with before in the past and where you're at now, and have the official diagnosis. Now, I was working with a veteran here recently where he was diagnosed with sleep apnea. And he was diagnosed with sleep apnea earlier this year. And he was diagnosed with mild or moderate sleep apnea. And it had been close, or about 9 months, 10 months since he had his last one. And so what I mentioned to him is go and get another sleep study. Try to wait, do your best as you can to get as close to the year mark so that you can compare. Now, I was hoping that this veteran would not have a worse diagnosis, because you certainly don't want any of these diseases to live with, right? Like you could get compensation for them, but you don't want sleep apnea, right? So in his case, that's what he's going to do. So when he puts his Nexus letter together, he can show, hey, sleep study 1 in February of this year compared to sleep study 2 of the following year, or 10, 11 months later, a year later, hey, things are getting worse. So that can also be information that could be included in the Nexus letter, right? So next, write a letter for the specialist doctor, right? So do some research on the connection between your medical illness and to your military service, right? There's some research that you can do, and I'll share in the next video on how you can put this together, right? Second, do some research on previously approved Board of Veteran Appeals court cases so that you can also include them in your letter. Now, also get lay statements from people who knew you before your service and after your service. More likely, it will be parents, siblings, right? Friends. And then, of course, after your service can also be friends, family, and then also people who you served with, right? Also, have every one of the letters notarized, right? Anybody can write anything, but the VA will look at it more closely, if you will, when they are notarized. Now, you want to include this information, not the whole entire letter, but a brief paragraph of what they stated, so that you can add that to your Nexus letter that you're going to put together for the specialist. Now, here's the thing. You want to make sure that everything is congruent. You want to make sure that, let's say your wife, let's say migraines, let's say you write a personal statement letter that you have migraines, 3 times a week. Your wife says she notices you have migraines once a month. Your parents say you never had migraines. Like, you want to make it so that it's, you're telling the truth and that it's all congruent, right? There's people who can testify and write that you didn't have migraines before the service, after your deployment to Iraq, Afghanistan, what have you, you having migraines, right? That can be in your Nexus letter that you'll put together. Now, here's the thing. Everything that I've shared with you to this point, you're going to have to give this information to whoever's going to write your Nexus letter. So the Nexus letter is the last thing to be done, because in order for, let's say you pay $2,500 or even $1,600 with CivDiv, they're going to want your medical documentation. They're going to want your lay statements. your personal statement, these things that you're going to give to the doctor who's going to write your Nexus letter. And yes, more likely than not, the Nexus letter that you're going to be paying for, that if you decide to pay for it, they will and should look up, have research that connects your disease to, or your issue with your military service, and also have similar court cases from the BVA, right? But here's the thing: if you have a serious illness, part of it in dealing with it is not just relying on doctors, it's educating yourself. So during this process, you'll be learning about what this disease is and how you can manage it and better it. It's not just about, nor in my opinion should be about, winning a claim. This is serious things, whether it's sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a very serious thing. You're not getting oxygen to the brain. And over time, your brain needs oxygen. All right. There's other things that are going on. But if this is a serious illness, look at court cases, do the research, how your illness is connected to your military service. So this is stuff that instead of paying $1,600, $2,500, this is stuff that you could be educating yourself on your issue that you could potentially have for a lifetime, right? So just something to think about, that these are things you're going to have to give to whoever, if you decide to pay for it, they're going to want all this information anyways that I've shared with you so far, right? So next, so put the letter together, right? If you're putting it together, and I'm going to share with you how you can easily put this all together, right? In the next video, I want to keep this video as short as possible. Now, research on medical conditions, the court cases, brief statements of what's in the notarized letters, and also make sure you're copying those links from your research and BVA courses. Now, I'm going to share with you how you can find medical connections and find those BVA court cases that are similar to yours, where you can help, or where you can put in those Nexus letters. Now, remember, this is about putting this letter together based off of your diagnosis, based off of past symptoms and conditions that you've had and putting it all together. It's not going to be a 20-page letter, right? But it's going to be important information, that it's going to be congruent from what's in your medical records, what's in your personal statement, what's in your lay statements, right? All going to be one, stating the same information. Now, send it to the doctor's office, right? When you have that conversation with the doctor's either going to say yes, no, or maybe. And a yes and maybe, you send the letter before you leave the doctor's office. You get the receptionist information to say, hey, the doctor is willing to look at this letter. What's the email address that I need, that it would be best for me to send it to? Get that information down. Come back to this video and the other following videos, so that you can see how you can put this Nexus letter together. It's going to cost you, if anything, much less than $1,600, right? And you could put this letter together. All right. Now, so send it to the doctor and get it on their letterhead. And there you have it. So in the next video, I'm going to be sharing with you how you can look up research to look up or to add to the Nexus letter, and also how you can add or locate BVA cases, so that you can add them to the Nexus letter, and putting this all together. Remember, this really is about your condition and educating yourself on this condition, right? I remember years ago, I'll share with you a quick story. I remember years ago, I was working as a health coach, and I was helping people in a number of different health issues. And I was speaking with an older lady, and she had diabetes. And in fact, both her and her husband had diabetes. And one of the things that I found really interesting in speaking with her was how much she dove into understanding diabetes to the utmost possibility. And I remember speaking to her and just being admired by how much she took ownership of her disease and how to manage it. And one of the things that she did was she got a glucose continuing monitor, where you have this monitor on your shoulder, and it's monitoring it. And one of the things that it's basically monitoring the blood sugar levels, right? What I was encouraging people to do was to write down what they ate and try to eat it, whether if it's a similar meal that they're going to have, or if it's an isolated piece of food that they would eat. And I remember this lady saying, "Oh, I already do that." Remember, I was very impressed by this lady really taking ownership of her medical condition. And what she found out, which I am very familiar of diabetes in my education and experience, and not personal experience, I'm not diabetic, but I'm very aware of the disease and have taught classes and so forth. And anyhow, but what she was telling me was that she discovered that, because oftentimes white rice is not something good for diabetics to eat. But what she discovered was that when she would eat rice, her blood sugar levels would go up, but her husband's level would go down. Everybody's different. And what they also found out was that when they ate potatoes, her blood sugar went up, or her blood sugar went down and his went up. This is solid information for them. And like I said, I was thoroughly impressed because of how much she took the ownership of her disease. And that's what I want to encourage you, that even though this might be some legwork, it's really about educating yourself. And it's really about taking ownership for your chronic illness or injury to help you in living a great quality of life, right? So in the next video, I will share with you how you can get research and how you can look up BVA court cases and to be able to put this letter together so that you are not having to pay out any money for a Nexus letter. Now, I know people want to roll the dice and get it done because they think it's going to win their claim. I get it. However, in the event that you really want to go through getting a Nexus letter, I know a resource that charges $500. That's an option as well. All right. And there's no kickbacks. So anyhow, or referral fees or anything like that. So anyhow, check out the next video that I'll have up here shortly. And in fact, there's the one for BVA court cases. All right. Thank you for watching and take care out there.